Was someone calling me?
Ladies and gentlemen, hello. Today I want to rant about something, and I really need to, because well, I don't know what else to do. I've tried everything else, right? And now complaining out loud to the internet is the next best thing, I suppose, that I have. AMD's drivers and software in general are unacceptably terrible. Alright? They just are. They're unacceptably bad. And I've complained about Nvidia and AMD both. Well, what do you want then? Intel? No, that's sort of the worst of both worlds. You know, best of both worlds, the sort of common expression? Well, yeah, this is the opposite. This is the worst of both worlds. Speaking of, there's another reason of why it's bad. Why does it do that? Why does it come up with the widget like 20 minutes after I've started the game? What are you doing? Never mind. Over the last 2 to 3 weeks or so, I've been busy. I had some work to do for uni and etc, but I also had the chance to play around with some settings on my graphics card and to play Borderlands a fair bit, and I had the chance to mess around a little bit, and I've discovered virtually every single possible problem that I can with this graphics card, and realized that it's not the card itself, it's the software. And God, is it making me angry. Okay, first of all, I've had crashes. I've had drivers crashing on me multiple times. I've had the monitor refusing to connect for some reason. I've had the graphics card just disconnect the monitor for no reason, and then I had to restart the computer and plug everything in, out and in again. I had the most unstable drivers I've ever had, and then I reverted to the previous update, and then a new update came out, and I upgraded to that, and then it's stabilized for a little bit, which I guess was fine. And then I had flickering. Yes, I had screen flickering, for which I thought the problem was the cable, right? The cable, the DisplayPort cable that connects my monitor to the graphics card. It wasn't the cable. I mean, first of all, the same cable worked perfectly fine on the same monitor on the 1060 that I had, the NVIDIA 1060 with 6 gigs of VRAM. That was a terrific card, and it was cheap, and the cable worked perfectly, and I never had any software issues with that card. Maybe once or twice in the 8 years that I've had it, or how long was it? I think it was like 7 years, something like that. I don't know, I'm pulling numbers off the top of my head, I don't exactly remember, but it was something like that. I've had it crash maybe once or twice. This thing crashes about once a day. Yeah, well, okay, maybe I'm exaggerating a tiny bit, but not by much, I assure you. It is a disaster. And yet, despite all of this, I still stand by my belief, and by what I said in the previous video, that I would still rather deal with these problems on a card that's objectively really powerful and good, than deal with Nvidia's bull, right? With their overpriced cards and their just greedy as all hell design of their graphics cards, where they want to sell you a new one every year now, so they purposefully limit the bandwidth, the VRAM they put in it, and everything, and it's just a massive disaster. I mean, to be fair, AMD is still pretty much the only graphics card making company out there that's still somewhat oriented towards gamers. Nvidia is not a gaming company anymore, sorry. I don't know if I'm the one to break the news to you, but it just is what it is. Matter of fact, Nvidia had I think like a press conference or something, which they addressed gamers with the words, "We've developed AI," and then ...
Follow my lead.
Yeah, okay, I get the message. The only thing they talked about in regards to gaming is AI. Nvidia is no longer a gaming company, ladies and gentlemen, they are an AI company. They might as well be run by an AI for all I care, and the recent actions they've taken. So let me put this into context. What I mean is I'm not defending or fanboying Nvidia when I'm talking about this, I'm merely complaining about the state of everything. So with that said, the screen flickering. Oh boy. So like I said, this is something I've been trying to get rid of for about 2 months, and now I have it to where it's roughly okay. It's not good, it still happens, but it's somewhat playable. Jesus Christ. Okay, so the screen flickering. Let's begin the saga of the screen flickering. Here's how it begins. I plug in the monitor, I'm getting these white lines across the screen, or white bars across the screen that look like those distorted, you know, on the old TVs, we call that, I mean, here locally we call that snow, right? Because it kind of reminds you of snow. It's like those white little dots that look like interference. Yeah, I kind of get flickers like that every now and again. And I was like, well, this looks like a cable problem. Maybe I've damaged the cable when I was plugging it in a while, although I was trying to be really careful. DisplayPort cables are really not very well designed to be, you know, handled by humans, let's say. It's just that, yeah, their design isn't ideal in that respect. But, oh, okay, never mind. Maybe it was me. Maybe I damaged the cable. Maybe I damaged the ports themselves. Oh, God, that's a bigger problem. But, okay, let's, you know what, let's forget about that. Let's get another cable, plug it into a different socket or a different port or whatever you will call it, and we'll go from there. And, yeah, all right, good, good. Excellent, excellent. Get a new cable. The flickering goes away. At least the most annoying flickering, the one with the snow thing, goes away. And for the first 20 or so minutes, I'm happy. And then, you know, I set up my settings properly, 144 hertz and everything, put the resolution in. Alright, there's no flickering, let's restart the computer. On the way into BIOS, like when you're still loading up your operating system, it's flickered there as well. I got like those white lines, so I was like, this is not a software problem, because software hasn't taken over yet, right? This is just the bare bones of the PC, so yeah, obviously it's a cable problem. Alright, good, so there it works fine, there's no more flickering, and I'm like, alright, superb. We load back in, and now the flickering, ladies and gentlemen, has changed color. Oh, yes. Now it's black. Now it flickers to black every 10, 15, 20 minutes or so. I'd say every 20 minutes or so is roughly when it happens. 15 to 20 minutes. Well, what the hell do I do now? Okay, let's restart the computer and try and figure this out. And I notice that if I restart the computer and I just go and browse the internet, it doesn't flicker. And it didn't flicker for like 2 hours while I was trying to find the solution for the flickering that just stopped. And I was like, okay, well, it's not flickering anymore. I don't know what that was all about, but let's just forget about it and keep going. And then I put on some Borderlands, and it starts flickering again. And I'm like, oh, this is a software issue, isn't it? Because if it was the graphics card or the cable, chances are it would have happened regardless of what I'm doing on the screen, right? So usually that means it's the software. Not necessarily, because you see, when you do something, when you're just like browsing the internet, it doesn't load there's no like serious tasks that the GPU needs to do. It isn't loaded with a bunch of things that it needs to do, right? Instead, it's just sort of semi-existing there, right? I mean, it's still doing things, but it's still displaying the picture, but it doesn't have a lot to process, is what I mean. But when you put on a video game, that's more demanding and more tasking of it, so maybe then it starts flickering. Maybe it is a hardware problem. It can be, but let's listen to the rest of the story, right? So what do we do from there on out? I'm like, right, so let's try and mess around with some driver updates, if there are any, some additional software that maybe I didn't install from the Catalyst or whatever. By the way, there's different places you need to download different parts of your drivers and different parts of your software from. Thank you, AMD. With NVIDIA, I didn't need to do anything. It just downloaded everything on its own, but just, okay, you know what, never mind. I understand NVIDIA has more convenience, that's okay. I'm willing to tinker around my graphics card to get it to work properly, that's fine. I know how to do it, so let's tinker around. And I do. And I was like, and I still notice that it's still flickering. Now, when I exit Borderlands, it keeps flickering on the desktop. And I'm like, this is a very weird problem, but I don't know how to solve this. Okay, so let's try and just disable everything and get the card to run in quote-unquote safe mode, right? Disable all the image sharpening, the quality, the color, whatever, the correction, just everything. Just delete all of that, just put it in default mode without anything enabled, see if it flickers. And ladies and gentlemen, to my absolute shock, it flickered less. Slightly less often, it flickered. What the hell do I do now? Okay, maybe it's a VSync issue. Oh, the infamous VSync. Well, I tried that. I tried with VSync, without VSync. But except now there's of course, this is AMD, so it has two different types of VSync. One controlled by your GPU, the other controlled by the application. I've tinkered with combinations of all of those things. And I've tried everything, and it made absolutely no difference. And it just got me more mad, progressively, the more I tinkered with it, because you're trying to change things, and nothing's changing, and like 90% of the solutions to my problems online were, oh, it's VSync. No, it's not VSync. It had nothing to do with VSync, unfortunately. I appreciate the effort to try and help me, but this has nothing to do with VSync, and I really wish that it did, because then I knew how to fix it. But it didn't, so I don't. Alright, well, where do we go from here? And I was like, okay, maybe it's a hardware problem. Let's try and turn off the 144Hz monitor, and just use the 60Hz monitor, the older one, and try and see if it flickers there. It doesn't. And I was like, aha, okay. So the drivers are having problems with flickering at 144Hz, plus, presumably. But 60Hz, there's no problems. Okay. The only problem is I bought this graphics card so I can play at 144Hz games with high frame rates. It's an expensive graphics card. Excuse me if I want to use my expensive graphics card to make it do what I paid for it to do. Alright, never mind. First world problem. Okay, let's try this. Put the monitor to 120Hz and see if it flickers. It does every 25 to 30 minutes. So slightly less often, but it still does. And then I do a whole bunch of tweaking in the NVIDIA control panel, in the AMD control panel thing, disabling and enabling all sorts of features, more stuff with VSync and FreeSync, and there's all sorts of stuff in there that I really don't care about, and I really don't want to tweak around with, but I do, and I have to learn what all of these things do. And I did, and there's CAS, there's anti-lag, there's anti-input lag, there's sharpening, there's whatever, and all of these features which I honestly don't see and don't feel, so I don't really know why they're there for me personally. Maybe in professional esports or something, it's relevant for people. Not for me, but now, okay, never mind. Alright, look, fine, I deal with all of this, and finally, after about 2 weeks of doing this, I got it to where it's not flickering. Most of the time. See, now I have a different problem. Now, it flickers in some games. Like in Borderlands, it'll still do a little bit of a screen tear and a little bit of flickering every now and again. Very rarely, and it's a lot less noticeable, but it will do it in Borderlands. However, in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, in Assassin's Creed Valhalla, in FIFA 15, in FIFA 22, in Warhammer Total War, and in Zelda I played on the TV. There was one more that I tried. Oh, in Hearts of Iron, yeah. In Hearts of Iron also, it doesn't flicker anymore. But it flickers in Borderlands, it flickers in FIFA 23, the new one, and it flickers in... It doesn't flicker in Red Dead Redemption 2 either. So it now flickers just in some games. Well, Juggernaut, have you tried turning on the VSync in those games? Yes, I did. I tried everything. I tried every combination of FreeSync, VSync, sharpening, and everything in every single one of those games, and it just didn't help. It either makes it worse or the same. So what the hell do we do? Well, fortunately or unfortunately, AMD then comes out with a driver update, whilst in the midst of all of this drama, right? And the driver update breaks 2 things, but fixes 3 of them. So it fixes some of the flickering, where I no longer need to worry about VSync in some of the games. Borderlands 3 still flickers occasionally. However, now, I don't have a problem with Hearts of Iron crashing my drivers, because that was also a separate issue and a separate story. You see, out of all of these games that I've mentioned, the only one that has a problem with my drivers, specifically, is Hearts of Iron. And I thought at the time, maybe this was because of some sort of mod conflict or something. Let me disable all the mods and play vanilla. Yeah, no, it's not a mod conflict. It's a drivers thing. The Paradox Grand Strategy game apparently really hates Nvidia's drivers for some reason. I don't know why. It just does. It crashes the game, or rather, they crash the game. Which I found very, very weird, because it's Hearts of Iron. It's not exactly a GPU-intensive game, is it? Like, what is there to do? I mean, the bloody thing could run off of the most basic laptop graphics card, right? It doesn't need all of... Oh, wow, okay. It doesn't need all of this. Okay, fine. So what do? And I try messing around with it, and it just doesn't work. And then my solution to fixing it was restarting the computer and starting Hearts of Iron before I open anything else. You see, then it worked. But if I closed Hearts of Iron and opened something else, like a different game, or even tried to watch a movie or something, and then tried to open Hearts of Iron again, it would crash the drivers. It was around this point that I was thinking, you know what, maybe all of this is just a Windows issue. An operating system issue. Because Windows, when you have issues with Windows and the installation, and maybe you have malware, and maybe you have something along those lines, you get weird problems like that. You get very, very weird problems. I think, a long, long time ago, I had, I say I had, it was like... Well, yeah, it was my PC still, nobody else used it, but this was years and years and years ago, right? I had a problem that my PC would crash if it wasn't connected to Wi-Fi, or it wasn't connected to the internet. It was a Windows issue. Well, specifically, I think it was some sort of old malware from the 90s, where it was designed to crash if you didn't have internet, and it was, I think, mining for data or anything, but it didn't work. Like, the malware didn't actually extract any information, it just made your computer glitchy. Thanks for that, I guess. I really don't know. I think that's what I learned eventually. But like I said, this was years and years ago, and I knew a lot less about PCs than I know now. But regardless, it's kind of besides the point. Windows issues can be weird, is my point, right? And... Was I supposed to do that? Yeah, I was. Okay, good. And then, like, okay, what do we do from there on? Well, I have no idea. So I just tried reading stuff online, try and look up a solution for my problems, couldn't find anything, and then AMD comes out with another update. And lo and behold, it works. Hearts of Iron no longer crashes. No longer crashes the drivers, the game no longer crashes, everything is fine. But in true AMD fashion, they fix one thing and they break another. Because see, now I have another weird issue. Mind you, this one's a heck of a lot less of a problem, but it's still a problem. Now, my drivers crash when I plug in another monitor. Or... Which, okay, that, yeah, like I said, that's pretty niche, you know, never mind, you can just turn off the PC, plug another one in, and you're golden. Or, the or is the problem here, right? Or, if I turn off one of my monitors, I have two. Well, I have two when I have the TV plugged into the PC as well, but the TV is off most of the time, so never mind. I use it to play Zelda sometimes, that's about it. Focus on the monitors, right? So if I turn off one of the two monitors and turn it back on again, the drivers crash, and I have to restart the computer. This is my latest problem in the saga of problems. On the upside, after about 3 weeks, I've managed to fix the flickering. Like I said, mostly. FIFA was the one that flickered the most. FIFA flickered like every 3 minutes. It gave me headaches. It really did. Like, it kept blinking every 3 minutes, and I was like, if I can get this to work, That is really funny. If I can get FIFA to work, I know I fixed it, right? Never mind. Didn't, you know, just eventually, I guess, just sorted itself out. I also have noticed another thing. If a game starts to flicker, restart the computer, start the game, and it won't flicker anymore. If you close the game and open a different game, the second game that you open in that sort of session will start flickering. Ladies and gentlemen, $1,000 is how much I've paid for this graphics card. And for $1,000, I expect it to do better. I expect to not have to deal with the vast majority of this nonsense. Not all of it, though, because, like I said, you have to sacrifice something. I understand that Nvidia's priced, literally, at least in my local stores in my country, double what AMD is. For the same performance that I get out of the 7900 XT, the Nvidia equivalent would cost literally double, just straight up double. And the double would come with a little bit less VRAM, I think, and it still wouldn't be as, you know, good in all categories, but performance-wise it would be around the same. Right? And it would cost literally, like, this cost 1,000, the upgrade to, the side path, I guess, with the other company to Nvidia would be 2,000. And I don't want to support Nvidia's business model in practice, which is why I'm not going to buy their cards, but at the same time, I'm sitting here going, you know what? The more I'm having to struggle with this nonsense, the more I'm thinking, it's almost worth it. I mean, if you can afford it, I can almost see it being worth it. Right? Because this is incredibly annoying. It's taken the joy out of playing video games for me, and I don't mean this in a dramatic sense, I mean this in a very literal sense. I get stressed out every time I have to sit on this computer. Have to for my job, but every time I want to sit...
Step aside, Alistair. While I trim the last loose end of
Sorry about this, I'll just skip this cutscene and I'll continue after the cutscene.
Yes, I know.
Well, that was short, I didn't even get the chance to click stop recording. Alright, never mind. So, let's continue. That is almost worth it, like I said. Ultimately, do I regret my purchase? Yes and no, right? On the one hand, it's the best graphics card I've ever had, and it's the most expensive graphics card I ever had, without, you know, even if we don't consider that prices are skyrocketing and they're way more expensive than they were in the past, etc., etc. It's the highest class of graphics card I've ever had. I've never been able to afford an expensive graphics card like this. The most I could have afforded back in the day, and you know, on my previous PCs, was the budget graphics card of that generation. So when the 3000 series came out, I didn't need a new graphics card per se, but I could maybe afford the 3060, were it priced normally. But of course, none of those cards were priced normally, so the last normally priced card that I was able to afford, and I say normally, meaning without, you know, the pandemic affecting the prices, without the chip shortages affecting the prices, without any of those things. In an ideal situation, the normally priced card that I was able to afford was the 1060. I couldn't afford a 1070, I couldn't afford a 1080. It was what it was, right? I'm in a slightly... Well, okay, I'm in a much better position financially now, I will admit. But I still can't afford a 1080 or... Oh, sorry. I still can't afford a 380 or a 480 for myself, because, like I said, they're around $2,000 on my in my local stores. And for me, that's simply way too much. So, with that said, if I'm not able to afford those cards, do I regret my purchase? No. It's incredibly annoying to have to deal with all of this, don't get me wrong. But, at the same time, it's an incredibly powerful card. It has 20 gigs of VRAM, it chews through everything you throw at it when it's not having those issues. It's really good. And that counts for something, right? It really does. The next thing I'm gonna need to upgrade is, well, the rest of my PC. I figured that I'm gonna need a new processor, but in order to get a new processor I need a new motherboard, and if I'm getting a new motherboard, I thought, you know what, I can afford the CPU and the motherboard, I might as well change the VRAM, might as well change the RAM, might as well get a, not an SSD, but what are they called, the new ones, where you don't put them in a SSD slot, you put them in, like, directly into the motherboard, the M2 something, I forget off the top of my head. They're sticks that look like RAM sticks, right? Like RAM memory sticks, except they work as hard drives. Or rather, they're not hard drives, but they work as storage drives, right? And install Windows on one of that to make everything run smoother. I can afford that, honestly, right now with my pay. Not immediately, it's still a huge investment, and I'm probably, like, worth 2 of my salaries, more or less, 1.5 or so, the entire upgrade. But at the same time, this computer isn't just for enjoyment and for running around in Borderlands all day. I work from this computer, right? I work from home, I write from this computer, and I need this, right? I make my bread and butter off of this computer. It just makes sense for me to upgrade it, and I'm gonna do it. So, at the same time, like, with all of these upgrades in line and everything, I don't regret the purchase. I really don't, because would I have been happier with an NVIDIA 480? Undoubtedly, yes. Would I have been happier morally with a card like that? No. No, because I hate what NVIDIA is doing, and I don't want to support that. And I really believe in voting with my wallet. So, at the same time, I understand, but it's just stressful and painful to have to deal with this at the same time, right? And it leaves me conflicted. And at the same time, every time I sit on this PC, I get stressed out because I'm thinking, oh god, what's gonna break next? And it does that. It breaks often. It crashes often. And like I said, I really hoped that this was just a Windows issue, but it's not. I tried the same thing on a fresh install of Windows, and had the same problems, right? It just... Unfortunately, NVIDIA has a monopoly on convenience right now, and stability when it comes to video games. Even though they're not a gaming company anymore, But, yeah, there you go. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. And the real sort of conflict I have within me right now is, as awful as this is going to sound, these problems are happening to me, and I know how to solve them, or at least how to go about solving them sometimes. Okay, not always, but a lot of the time I know how to go about solving these things. What about the people that don't? Yeah? What about the people that aren't as tech savvy, and I have an example of this in someone I know, a colleague online, right? What about them? What about the ones that aren't as tech savvy, that don't have the patience to deal with all of this, and just want to play their games, want to plug in their GPU, load up a game, and play it, and not have everything start flickering and crashing around them? What about those people that don't know how to solve these issues? Because if I didn't know how to solve this, I would throw this GPU in the trash can. Because it'd be worthless to me. And that's a bloody terrifying thought, almost. Yeah? Because that puts a sort of different perspective on things, because all of a sudden this isn't worth $1,000, this is $1,000 wasted, because I can't do anything with it. If I didn't know how to fix all of this, at least. Screw that, in all due honesty and pardon the language. So ultimately, should you get an AMD card? If you don't want to support Nvidia, like I don't, anymore, then yes. But also, you have to bear in mind that a lot of the time, it will give you hell. And you will need to tinker around with it quite a bit. And it's not going to be pretty, and it's going to be annoying, and stuff is going to be crashing, and you're going to have problems, and you need to tinker around with the settings and all the extra options and stuff to make sure it works, and sometimes you're not going to understand what you're doing, and you need to learn online what does what, and there's a certain reward in that entire process, don't get me wrong. But at the same time, if you don't want to deal with that, I don't know what to tell you. Maybe Nvidia isn't such a great option. It's gotten me, genuinely, to the point where I'm thinking, you know what? It genuinely seems a better piece of advice to buy a weaker Nvidia card at this point than a stronger AMD card just for the convenience. And this is something that I believed several years ago, and unfortunately it's still true. The only issue is that... Well, the only issue right now, honestly, is the VRAM on Nvidia cards, and the bandwidth, which has purposefully been reduced on lower-end cards. Which I think is just ridiculous and greedy and just disgusting, honestly. Were it not for those issues, I would be an Nvidia fanboy, I really would. I would be like, you know what, sod AMD, I don't want to deal with these problems, I'd rather have a worse Nvidia card than for the same price buy an AMD and not have to, and not be able to use it for like 2 hours or 5 hours a day, because I'm trying to fix whatever's causing the flickering or the crashing nowadays. Right? But, as it stands, an 7900 XT or an XTX is going to leave you annoyed that you have to fix all these things, but at the same time, very, very happy 3, 4, 5 years from now, because you have an incredibly powerful card with a ton of VRAM, with a ton of processing power that you don't really need to think about an upgrade. Whereas with Nvidia, 8 gigs of VRAM is not enough today. Yeah? It's not enough now, let alone a year from now or 2 years from now. Currently, it is not enough. But, at the same time, a lot of people play on 1080p still, and I understand that. I still think it is very much worthwhile upgrading to 144, sorry, to 1440p and a higher hertz monitor. I absolutely stand by my decision. I mean, this game right now is a joy to play, and the screen looks gorgeous on my end. Obviously, with YouTube compression, this is not going to look anywhere near as pretty. But, like I said, it makes sense, right? It looks gorgeous. It's a lot more pleasant to play, and I couldn't go back to a old monitor that I had right now. So I'm glad I sold it, and by proxy, I'm glad that I upgraded my PC as a whole to be able to play like this. But I will leave you with one more.
Maddox was a nervous man who never left his room. The outside world was full of those who surely meant him doom. While his concentration was on ruination, the gun in his back went kaboom.
Oh, in his back, right. Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. I will leave you with one more thing, though. I'm going to leave a prediction right now. I'm going to leave a prediction, and that prediction says the following. I don't think there's going to be a technological leap in the sense that we had in the early 2000s anytime soon. Because you see, in the early 2000s, I mean, it started off in the 90s, but I remember the early 2000s the most. So in the early 2000s, we had this huge technological leap year in, year out, right? So a graphics card would come out, and then a year or two later, another series would come out, and it would be much, much stronger. And games would be so much different, right? They would revolutionize everything. You know, from Halo to Mass Effect to Call of Duty, all of these had something revolutionary to them. Whether it be, you know, the gameplay, whether it be graphics, it was one leap after the other. We went from pixel-looking graphics of Pac-Man to photorealism, and then, you know, moving towards photorealism. And then that sort of died down and stopped, but we still had, you know, big leaps forward in technology. And then people bought the 1080 Ti, and they can still use it to this day, and it works brilliantly. And now you can buy the 4080. What I'm saying is, despite all the announcements of quantum computers and this type of architecture and that type of architecture, I really don't think there's going to be that big of a change and that big of a leap in computers and in technology over the next dozen years or so. I'm not saying that we're not going to have any advancements, don't mind you. I'm just saying that maybe, despite the pricing being still off, maybe now is a really good time to get a good PC. Because, on the one hand, you'll be able to use it right now, and you're going to love it, since it's going to feel like going into the future, right? With the performance and everything. So, you know, DDR5 RAM, 32 gigs, a brand new AMD or Intel processor with tons of cores and very fast, and etc, etc. And they're not that expensive. You can really find some for what I consider to be reasonable prices. It's the only GPUs that are ridiculously expensive. I think the other parts are very reasonable. I think like 32 gigs of DDR5 are around $100 now. It's 32 gigs of RAM. I mean, I come from a generation where 4 gigs of RAM was wow. Matter of fact, I remember when our RAM was in megabytes, so... But I'm old. Right, let's start talk about that. But, you know, back in my day, 4 gigs of RAM was like, wow. And then, at one point, I got 8 gigs of RAM, and that lasted me forever. And now I have 16, and I'm really happy with it. I don't need more. I'm going to get more because it's cheap, and I'm going to get a new motherboard, and this RAM isn't, because DDR4 is not going to work on a DDR5 RAM motherboard, and etc, etc. And the difference between getting 32 gigs and 16 gigs is not that significant, so I can just pay a little bit more, I'm willing to. But what I'm saying is, maybe now's a good time to really invest in some nice PC parts, because I feel like they're going to last us a very, very long time. Part of this isn't just my general skepticism towards technological innovation, which, don't get me wrong, will happen. I just have my doubts as to its pace and to its how much, you know, better it's going to be, but part of it is also, a large part of it is also down to the gaming industry. Because, you see, it's been a very, very long time since a AAA game has done something revolutionary or really been great. Yeah. Have you I think everyone's sort of noticing this quietly, right? I mean, don't get me wrong, Diablo 4 is fun, and which one was also pretty positively reviewed lately? Jedi Survivor, right? Despite its somewhat problematic launch, and according to some at least, and some, it's, you know, port being not that great, etc., etc. Yeah, okay, it had problems, but overall I think it was reviewed pretty well. Now what else did we have? We had Red Dead Redemption, which, you know, everyone loves and probably one of the best games ever. It's going to go down in history as one of the most loved games ever. Do I agree with that? To an extent. But they didn't necessarily revolutionize much. We had Cyberpunk, which in the sort of tech world is now being used as the go-to benchmarking thing. But you take a look at the graphics of Cyberpunk, and you take a look at the graphics of something like Red Dead Redemption or Hogwarts Legacy, and mind you, there is a difference, and Cyberpunk looks great, but it's not that great. I mean, GTA 5 looks great also, and you put in some reshade mods and stuff into it, and it looks better than Cyberpunk, I'm sorry. See, Cyberpunk is being used as a benchmark because it's a demanding game, not because it looks the best. I mean, looks are obviously, you know, something that's highly subjective, but it's demanding graphically. But its graphical fidelity isn't the highest at the same time, right? So all I'm saying is kind of keep this in mind when we're talking about, you know, advancements and stuff like that. Anyways, my point is, overall, the gaming industry isn't doing all that well. Profits-wise, yes it is, but there's more and more of a focus on mobile games, on making games more accessible to everyone, rather than trying to revolutionize the industry and really push boundaries. So, to that extent, I don't think something radical is going to happen in the next few years that's going to just make all of our investments into our fancy PCs, should we make them now, completely obsolete. I don't think Intel is going to come up with anything new. I don't think any of the new graphics cards are going to be, you know, particularly incredible or whatever. I don't think any of that's going to be a thing. Maybe I'm wrong, but the TLDR of this video is, I think it's a good time to invest a solid amount of money into your PC. Maybe wait a little bit more if you really want to not have to pay much, but at the same time understand that time is money, right? The more time you spend waiting, the more time you're not actually using what you paid, and we all have a very limited and finite amount of time on this earth, and I don't want to spend it waiting for the correct time to buy something, unless it's an investment in stock or whatever, because that's kind of the entire point. But with amenities and with luxuries like this, sometimes it's okay to pay a little bit extra just to get more use out of something. At the same time, you could upgrade your PC 10 years from now and just wait, but you're going to miss out on so much, and you're going to spend 10 times just waiting. And if you're happy to do it, if you don't, you know, if you don't want anything new, fine, but if you do, you've just wasted 10 years, or how much, what did I say, 10 years, yeah. Just keep it in mind that there is a balance between waiting and getting what you want now. Yeah, it exists for a reason. Anyways, those were my thoughts. Tell me what you think about the entire situation. I suppose it's you know, not ideal, like I said, but at the same time, what are we gonna do about it? We could just complain, and that's, I suppose, what I'm doing. But I felt the need to share some of my experiences, at least, because I don't see a lot of people talking about this, and it is a legitimate problem. Also, bear in mind that just because I had these issues doesn't mean that you'll have them. There is a chance that what's going to happen is you're going to
Head to the vault. I will meet you there.
buy your PC, or buy your AMD graphics card, and it's going to work fine. And you're not going to have any of the issues that I had. But you could. And with AMD, the chances are you're not going to have those issues. And the chances are I wouldn't have had those issues with NVIDIA, sorry. I'm ranting on at the end right now. NVIDIA is more stable and more user-friendly is what I'm getting at. But, point being, I'm really happy that I'm able to afford a fancy PC now, and that I, at the same time, I've put myself in a position where I need one, because this is how I make my money, and it just makes sense to get one, right? So I like that. I really do that. I like the fact that I've put myself in such a position, and I'm excited to finally upgrade this thing, which is very, very old now. This motherboard's ancient. I can't wait to put all the new stuff in there and see how it goes, and maybe some of my problems go away, you know, alongside it, but I don't know. Either way, my thoughts are, like I said, that it's a worthwhile investment nowadays because of the longevity of it. I think it's going to be a great PC for a very long time, basically. I don't think we're going to need to upgrade to 64 gigs of the hypothetical DDR6 RAM, which doesn't exist, right? But once it wills itself into existence, I don't think we're going to need to upgrade to something like that for a very, very long time. So yeah. Anyways, that was. I don't want to rant and rave about this for any longer. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. My name is Juggernaut. Like, subscribe down below if you enjoyed the video, and we'll stay tuned with the rest of the content that I produce on my channel. Till next time, have fun, take care, and bye-bye.